Anthology Edition. Behind every strong face is a story. Behind every story is a man who dared to feel. Men hurt too. Unmasking the stories behind strong faces is a bold and healing anthology that gives voice to the silent struggles of men. In these pages, fathers, sons, brothers, and leaders step out from behind the mask of strength to share their truth, raw, redemptive, and real. From childhood wounds to adult battles, each testimony is a sacred offering of vulnerability and victory. These men are not victims, they are overcomers. Their stories remind us that healing is not weakness, and faith is not passive. It is active, intentional, and transformative. This book is for every man who's been told to man up, while silently breaking down. It's for every woman who loves him, and it's for every ministry, movement, and moment that seeks to restore wholeness to the masculine soul. Because healing has no gender, and silence is no longer an option. Join this project D-Line to join December 1st, 2025. Book release date January 10th, 2025. The authors of The Men Hurt Too Unmasking the Stories Behind Strong Faces project will be showcased at the 2026 Men Hurt Too conference in Dallas, Texas.
You are about to watch a new episode of My Brother's Keeper podcast, a safe space for men here on the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show channel. Healing, empowerment, transformation. Thank you for tuning in.
Well, good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to My Brother's Keeper podcast. I'm your host this evening, Joseph Roberts, and joining me this evening, we have our very own Mr. Melvin Lee, as well as our special guest this evening, Mr. Deric Durden, in the house with us today. Our other brothers that's normally on here with the podcast had some other prior commitments, so they weren't able to be a part of our journey this evening, but they're always here in spirit, and they might tune in, they might jump on the line, who knows. These brothers are like that. They like to check in, and they're listening to us even when they're away. So shout out to our brother Hilton, our brother Alex, and our brother Carl. These brothers are always great contributors to the program, and so we certainly missed having them in our presence this evening, but we're glad to have the brothers that are here tonight, Brother Melvin and Brother Deric. Hey, brothers, how you doing this evening?
I'm blessed, man. Glad to be on the
Great. Glad to
call
hear
with
that.
you guys. Yes.
All right. And Brother Deric, how you doing, my brother? It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute, man. I'm doing awesome. It's just a blessing to be able to be on this platform to share and give some valuable information to the men who are listening.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all about here. This is what we're trying to do, create this safe space, acknowledge the fact that men are going through some things. And oftentimes we don't have that platform, we don't have that safe space to pour out, to release, to let it go, if you will, and definitely not to be in a space amongst other brothers who can receive what we have to say without feeling that sense of judgment or ridicule or anything of that nature. So again, this is what My Brother's Keepers podcast is all about. And we thank you to our listeners who are checking in with us this evening. We're glad that you are aboard, and we hope to be a blessing to you this evening in what we share, and being transparent and being vulnerable. So with that said, our podcast topic for this evening that we're going to focus on tonight is what we like to refer to as the comeback, scriptural truths, if you will, about rising again. The reality of this situation is, men often face silent battles, failures, shame, broken relationships, or even spiritual drift. I mean, that is just a reality in the life of many men, regardless of age, regardless of background, regardless of, how they were raised or anything of that nature. And so what we're trying to do this evening, what we're looking to do this evening is explore how Scripture actually affirms that no setback is final when God is involved. This tonight we're talking about reclaiming our identity, our purpose, and our hope. So again, our topic for this evening is the comeback, scriptural truths about rising again. So with that said, brothers, let's delve into this topic, and I'd like to start off with just a simple question, if you will. And it may seem simple, but perhaps it may not be as simple as it appears to be, which is exactly what is a comeback. A lot of times when we think about the word making a comeback, if you will, or the comeback in general, is we look at it from we tend to look at it from a worldly perspective when we talk about the comeback. So just today, for example, many of us probably sat around, watching some football, and we may have seen some teams that were down and thought that the game was over, and then they buckled down, they had some key plays, and they came back and ended up winning the game. There have been some other scenarios in life that we've encountered, where similar things have taken place, where that comeback has been ignited, a circumstance that looked like it was going to be that we're going to be taking that L, but in the end we got the W. And oftentimes when that happens, when you look at it from a worldly perspective, we tend to attribute it to, oh, that was a lucky thing that took place, or that was that was just an ultimate buckling down, if you will. And when you look at it from that worldly perspective, that might be the case. But then for those of us, the brothers in particular that are online, with us this evening, we understand that when you have a relationship with God, comebacks look a little bit different. It's more than just you overcoming a situation and in the end, being out on, coming up on top. It's actually an opportunity for us to recognize the fact that the reason why we got the victory was not because of just our own efforts, just our own doing, but that God had his hand involved in the situation that transforms this victory in a way that's different than what the world might possibly understand. And so that's why when we think about comebacks, we have to look at it not just as a recovery opportunity, but this is actually a divine repositioning, if you will, because a lot of times God has us go through what we go through for the purpose of not to inconvenience us, not to make us uncomfortable in a way as if we are being punished, but to actually have us battle through that storm so that as a result of the storm, we are now, as we just stated, repositioned to actually be a blessing to other people. And every brother on this call this evening has gone through some type of situation where that very thing has actually happened in our lives. So this is what we're going to hit on to start off our conversation this evening. I see our brother Carl has jumped on this evening. Hey, brother Carl, how you doing? We're glad to have you. Yeah, your mic is muted. Oh, there you go.
You got me? You got me?
Yeah, we got you. We got you, man. We're glad to see you, man.
Man.
Joining the crew.
Join Rising Elevator, everybody. Good to see you guys. Man,
you too, man. You too.
My brother's keeper. Let's go.
That's right. That's right. That's right. My brother's keeper. So I'm gonna throw it out to you guys. I mean, I kind of gave a general overview, if you will, of the comeback. When you think about a comeback, and I'll start with you, Deric. What comes to mind when you think about somebody speaking about a comeback? What does that mean to you? How would you explain what that looks like to somebody?
I mean, just in the definition of the word comeback, in order to have a comeback, you have to first go somewhere else. You have to be off track. You have to be displaced, if you must, in order to have a comeback. And so when I think about comeback, it's about a journey. Or sometimes we drift, sometimes we go down paths that lead us in a direction that we wasn't purposed to go down. But even that, when you talk about God, we know that when we are connected to God, even if we get off track and our journey is going in the wrong direction, He can always redirect us. A lot of times we think that certain rejection or feeling lost, uh, that we have lost our purpose. We start thinking negatively about ourselves in so many other ways that we continue to drift. But the thing about the comeback is once you have God in your life and you get back on track, He puts you in a position and He can also make up the time and the distance that you lost when you were off track. And He can get you to a place where you was purposed to be. And then He can elevate you even further than where you would have been if you wouldn't have got off track. And so with me, I think about comeback. I think about one, going off track, two, getting back on track, and then being elevated to the next level.
Love that. Love that. So again, what this brother is saying here is like, in order for the comeback to even happen, there's some prerequisites that have to take place. There has to be a moment where you have fallen off. You have gotten out of your lane. You've gotten off track. You're out, off centered, if you will. There has to be that kind of moment. There has to be there's some level of adversity that's taking place. And a lot of times when we think about that, we love a good comeback story. We love a good comeback, message, if you will. But a lot of times we don't like to go through the first that preliminary part. We don't want to go through that storm. We don't want to go through that inconvenience. We don't want to go through that discomfort. But if you are going to grow, if you're going to elevate, if you're going to rise up and be repositioned into the purpose of what that storm is all about, you have to be willing to go through that challenge, that storm of the moment. You have to be willing to embrace it instead of running from it. And I think that's a very important lesson for any of us to grab hold to, and to our listeners. Understand that part of that comeback process means you have to go through. And just because you go through doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. Sometimes the going through, especially when you're talking about God having his hands on it, that going through part of it is critical. It's necessary because it's a setup, not for your demise, but for your rise, for your elevate, for your chance to be not only to be blessed, but to be equipped to be a blessing to other people. So I love the way, Deric, that you kind of pointed that out, and identifying it also as a journey that you're on. That recovery, if you would, that comeback, while it might lead to a recovery, that's not the end part of it. Because that's another point of it too, is that a lot of people think, okay, I came back and that's it. No, actually, you're just getting started in many ways, because you've been repositioned, and we're going as far as to say you're being repositioned in a divine manner, because we're acknowledging the fact of God's hand being involved in it and taking you to a new level, a new space that may be totally unfamiliar to you. But you had to go through the storm, not only to be able to prepare for that experience that you're about to encounter, but to be relatable to the people that he's already predetermined that you're going to impact, that you're going to experience, that you're going to be have to be relatable to, in order for them to receive whatever the message is that you have for them. So good stuff there. How about you, Carl? When you think about a comeback, if you had to define what a comeback is about, what does that mean to you when you hear that word?
Don't make it a comeback. Nah, it's just thinking, because everybody that went through it, I can think about journeys I done went on. Like Mr. Durden says, when you're down on yourself, you're in between them four walls at home by yourself, and you get down on yourself. Nothing's going your way, and you just got to sit back and think. Because some people, after they get so down on themselves, they go the other way. But you want to be the person that when you get down on yourself, you go the opposite way, which is the right way. You need to reset. Take the time that you need to reset your mind, whatever it is that you're going through. Because we go through a lot of things, and so the pressure get hard on us. So we have to reset our mind and get stronger and make a comeback. You can write it down, whatever it is, to make a comeback. You see what you did wrong the first time, so you won't go down that same journey and do it wrong again. So you want to do it the right way, and that's the way I will come back.
Love that. And one thing that stands out to me about what you said is you're pointing out the fact that all ultimate comebacks aren't necessarily based on the situation that you're in. Sometimes, in other words, there doesn't have to be a thing that's going on that you are looking to have a comeback for. Sometimes sometimes you are the situation. You yourself are the situation. You're dealing with something that is internal, that's going on within you, that has you in a space, has you in a place, mentally, emotionally, physically, and or spiritually, to where you feel like, you know what, I'm stuck in this zone that I'm in, and I got to come up out of this. Right. Something is hindering me. Something is binding me, if you will. Something has me in shackles, so to speak. And it could be something as far back as, it doesn't even have to be something that's just recently going on right now, or just happened in the last few days or so. You could be trying to have a comeback from something that took place as far back as childhood. Ooh. A trauma that you experienced at maybe 7, 8, 9 years old, that you have still held inside of you all of these years, well into adulthood, that maybe nobody knows about, or only a very few select people know about. but you struggled all of this time trying to figure out a way. How do I let this out? How do I unleash this in a way where I can get it up, not only get it up out of me, but get on a path of recovery, that get on that comeback road, if you will, as a result of that situation. And so that's why I think it's key that you brought that up, because particularly with men, there are so many men across this world who are dealing with that very same thing. We talked about that subject matter at our Men Hurt 2 conference earlier this year. In particular, when we said, you got, you know, 40, 50, 60 plus year old men dealing with something that they may be chronologically that particular age, but emotionally, there's a little boy inside who's crying. There's a little boy inside who's hurting. There's a little boy inside who is traumatized by something that he has not had a safe space to talk about, a safe space to deal with, which again ties right back into why we're even having this podcast, why we're even having this conversation, because this is a very, very real thing. And it just messes up a man, and it affects multiple levels of his life, his relationships, his job situation, maybe how he handles money, all kind of stuff, how he parents his kids, all kind of stuff are impacted just because of a circumstance, a situation that he's dealing with within himself, that he just has not had that proper place and space to be able to dissect it and break it down and ignite that healing. So Onyx, I see you tuning in. No, this is a men's podcast, but you are definitely welcome to be on this. So you are not in the wrong place. Trust me and believe that. You are not in the wrong place. I'm sure you have men in your life who are dealing with some stuff. And we welcome ladies to participate in our podcast. We're subject on we're focusing on the subject of men type of issues and topics, but by all means, women are welcomed as well, because we need you ladies to help. You got a brother, you got a husband, you got a significant other, you got a father, you got a son that is dealing with some stuff, and he just hasn't felt comfortable. He hasn't had that safe space to let it all out. So you are definitely in the right place. And tell any other ladies that want to tune into this or any future shows that you are more than welcome to be a part of this experience. So yeah, with that said, man, thank you, Carl, for what you shared there. I think that's valuable information. Brother Melvin, what's your take on this? When you think about what is a comeback, what does that mean to you?
Well, I'm gonna break it down two different ways. University of Texas played yesterday. They scored 24 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. They were down 17 points, and in the natural, they not only they came back, they come back and won. And I think that's when you're talking about a comeback, you want to be able to reach different mindsets, different souls, different aspects of people. And what happened? They didn't give up, right? They realized they was up against some adversities, but they didn't throw in the towel. They didn't give up, and they not only turned around and uh, was able to win the game, but they won it in good fashion because they scored 24 points. That's something almost unheard of in the last quarter to win. And then, of course, biblically stating, if you look at Job, where the devil attacked Job's whole family and his livestock and everything. Everything was taken away, but he never gave up. And of course, his wife said, "You might as well just go ahead and curse God." He even had he got a sickness, but he just continued to praise God. And with that being said, like Derek was saying, now not only did he get blessed, he had more than what he lost. His livestock was astronomical. He was able to, of course, now not only was he rich, now he became wealthy in that Christian aspect. So, for as putting, God first, not giving up, and continue to pray as we go through different things, we want to be reminded that we don't want to give up. We don't want to throw in the towel. God don't want us to throw in the towel. And the word states that storms going to come, and God, it states that God would never leave us or forsake us. So, and I think it's so important that we're reminded of that as men.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Those are great points, and And what I love about what you said, and this is what's the beauty about having a podcast like this, is all you brothers are hitting it from different angles, and everybody's right in what you're hitting on. These are all valuable points. You know, what I heard you say, Brother Melvin, is, first of all, I love the fact that you acknowledge that, you know, even when I'm down, that doesn't mean I'm out. I'm not out the game. I might be in a deficit situation. I might be behind. The odds may be against me, but just because you're down doesn't mean that you're out. That just because you have strayed doesn't make you a lost cause. Because, see, to suggest that you are a lost cause, to suggest that it's over for you, would indicate that there's no possible way for there to be a comeback, that there's no way of recovery from that. There's no way of a bounce back. And what we're trying to say here is that no matter what you think you might be going through, no matter how insurmountable it may seem to be, no matter who you may have, no matter that you may have never heard of anybody ever being in a situation like that and coming back from it, doesn't mean that it isn't so. Even if you have been destined to be the first person to ever come back from that particular situation, the comeback is available to you. The ultimate question is who am I relying upon for the comeback? Because when I rely upon just myself, even though God has equipped all of us with certain skill sets and abilities and wisdom, if you will, we are only equipped to do so much. But the reality of life is that there are going to be some storms that come your way that, truth be told, are going to hit a little different. That you live long enough, you are going to have seasons in life where that storm that hits you is going to be a storm that your money can't fix. It's going to be a storm that the extra letters after your name can't fix. It's going to be a storm that the contacts in your phone can't fix. It's just going to be you in that storm, that you're going to be up against that battle, and you're going to have to figure out, how am I going to do this? And you're not going to have the answer, but the answer that is available to you is God himself. If you are in a relationship with him, if you cast your burdens onto him, then you understand what his power is, then you know that no matter how bleak my situation looks, if he's in the mix of it, it's going to work itself out just fine. I'm going to win in the end. There's an old phrase, God plus one is always a majority. If I'm on God's team, if I'm with him, I can't lose. And I don't know about you brothers, but the last time I checked, God is undefeated. His winning streak is infinite. He ain't lost yet. And so that's why it's so important for that connection to be in place, especially when you're talking about overcoming the challenges and the storms of life. Because again, we can't carry that weight on our shoulders all the time, trying to be, especially as men. Sometimes we're gonna be Superman, we're gonna be the tough guy. I don't need no help, I got this, I can handle this, I'm a man. Yeah, you're a man, but you're still a human being. You still have vulnerabilities, you still have weaknesses, you still have limitations as to what you can do on your own and in your own strength. But as the scripture says in Matthew 19:26, with God all things are possible. It didn't say with Joe all things are possible, or with Deric, or with Carl, or with Melvin all things are possible. It said with God all things are possible. And that's what we have to understand, that God has to be in the mix of it all for us to be able to deal with all of the potential challenges and storms of life. That's why when you get, for those of us who've been married or, are currently married, that's why when you stand up, in front of the pastor and you're going through those vows, it doesn't just talk about man and woman coming together and that just be it. God has to be a part of that cord, if you will, that interconnection with you. Because if you're just trusting for a man and a woman to survive, a husband and a wife to survive and make the marriage work on our own, that's not how it's going to roll. There's going to be some issues that's going to be bigger than y'all, and if you only the two of you are trying to make that thing happen on your own strength, on your own abilities, you're going to be vulnerable, and ultimately it's going to fall apart. But with God there's nothing too big for you to be able to overcome. There's nothing too big for you to survive. So that applies to every situation in life. So I love the way how each of you brothers have made that connection about what it means, to have that comeback and the prerequisites that are required and the journey of it all, because that's exactly what it is. And again, I want to emphasize to our listeners, when you're going through, instead of looking for a way out, looking for a way to run away from it, look for a way to embrace it. And if you really want to know a sign of your own spiritual growth in that regard, is when that storm hits and you have your moment to process it, whether that moment is, shedding some tears, whether it's, punching a bag, whether it's yelling in the air in frustration. But when you know that you can have your moment and then you can kind of pull it all together and come to the realization, come to the understanding, you know what? This is a tough situation. This is, again, it's inconvenient. It's uncomfortable. This isn't the way that I would have wanted it to play out. But because of who I know I'm connected with, because of who I know I belong to, because of the royalty of the royal line that I come from, I know that my situation is going to be just fine. It's going to work out. Whatever God's will says that looks like, I'm gonna roll with that. I'm gonna trust it. I'm gonna believe in it. I'm gonna exercise my faith and allow God to do what He does best, and show the world through me, using me as a vessel, what it looks like to trust in Him and be able to overcome those challenges and difficulties of life. So great stuff that you brothers are bringing up. And one more thing, Brother Melvin, that you brought up, I like the fact that you identified the fact that there are multiple examples in God's word about men who have been faced with challenging situations and they've made that quote unquote comeback, if you will. Job is a perfect example of that. Even people who are not, Bible scholars have likely heard about, Job being, being favored by God, having everything a man could ever want in this world, and then having it all stripped from you all the way down to as close to a breaking point as you could come. And then God not only restores him, but He restores him twofold, threefold over what he had before, all because of his relationship, all because of his faith. He made the comeback that only God could redeem him from, only God could put His hands on and make happen. Because if Job would have tried to do it on his own strength, on his own effort without God, then there's no way he makes it. There is no story that we hear about with Job, or if we do hear about it, it's a totally different ending to that story. But because he relied on God, because he didn't allow the enemy, despite having all that he possessed, all that he loved in terms of family, be taken away from him, he still held firm in the midst of the storm. And that is so critical. Other examples that come to mind, I'll go off of my namesake. We talk about Joseph in the Bible, being betrayed by his brothers, being basically left for dead, sold into slavery. But what does his recovery look like? He ends up leading nations. He ends up being able to not only help a massive amount of people, but his own family, that neglected him, that left him for dead. His own brothers. He had his recovery moment. He had his bounce back, a bounce back that if you looked at it from a worldly perspective, you say, ain't no way he's coming back from that. He's as good as dead. Not the most, one of the most iconic characters in the Bible that we would ever be able to talk about. And then of course there's other examples, whether you're talking about, Moses, whether you're talking about, you think about the story about the prodigal son. He got all his inheritance earlier than what he was supposed to, and he goes out in the world and he squanders it all, right? um most families, most circumstances, he would have just been, left to his own devices. If he spent it all and he was out there on his own, struggling just to get food in his mouth, just to provide shelter over him, they'd be like, oh well, that was on you. You demanded to have your money up front. You wanted to do your thing. But no, God set it up to where when he came back to his father welcomed him. His father received him. It was a celebration that came out of that. So we have multiple stories in God's word that speaks to recovery. So again, recovery is a very real thing. Is a very realistic, opportunity that could happen for any man, no matter what your situation is. So brothers that are tuning in, or even ladies that are tuning in, who know brothers who are feeling like, that they don't have any hope for recovery, they don't have any hope for bounce back, encourage those men. Let them know that there is still a possibility, that there is still a chance, but they have to make the connection and understanding that God needs to be a part of that. Quit trying to be so tough, be so much of a man that you got to kind of carry that all on your own. So great stuff, my brothers. Great stuff. So when we talk about this whole comeback, I want to kind of delve into it a little bit further. One of the questions I want to throw out to you guys: why do you believe men struggle to actually believe that they can come back? I mean, we've given all kind of reasons as to and examples of scenarios where they've come back, but there's some men out here right now who they just don't see any hope in that. They don't think that there's a possibility for the comeback. So I'm curious to hear from you, brothers, and I'll jump back to you, Deric. Why do you believe that men tend to struggle in thinking that they cannot come back from situations that may seem insurmountable, that may seem impossible to overcome? Why do they feel like that it can't happen for them, even if they've heard of examples of it happening for other brothers?
When it comes to that, I think it's definitely mental. When a brother feels like he can't come back, he has surrounded his mistakes with shame and guilt and self-doubt. You know, we all made mistakes, but sometimes we make mistakes that we feel like we shouldn't have made. Or sometimes we make mistakes that hurt other people. And in that process, uh, we feel guilt, we feel shame, and those things become debilitating factors that stop us from reaching the next level, reaching a stage of forgiveness, reaching out to other people to ask for help also. And so once we start telling ourselves those narratives that we're not good enough, that we're full of shame, that we're full of guilt, and actually start believing those things, that stops us from being able to move forward and actually step into our comeback story.
I totally agree with that. Like you said, it's a mental game that comes on. Sometimes that mental game is self-inflicted. Sometimes that mental game comes from what you hear in the traditional stereotypes of men, and especially taking it one step further, especially black men. We come into the world, we come straight out of the womb already being told that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, that we don't have any value or purpose in this world, that we're destined to a life of gangs and drugs and violence and poverty and things of that nature. So if you've been indoctrinated with that kind of information right out the gate, if that's all you see on all the different media outlets and things like that, or just even people around you in your perhaps friends and family telling you that you're no good, that you ain't gonna never be nothing, that you're a waste of space, if you will, that can all, no matter even the toughest of men, that can get into your head to a point where you will feel like, well, I'm just gonna be what I'm gonna be. And that's why unfortunately you have young men who they're not even expecting to live long lives. Like they're already anticipating that I'm only here for a short time and I'm just gonna get what I can get. I'm just gonna do what I can do until my time comes up to be checked out of here. Not because they grew old and had accomplishments in life and family and all that, but because they're expecting to maybe die in these streets or die to certain systemic restrictions or limitations that are imposed upon them. So, Brother Carl, what do you think about that? Why do you think that men are struggling, in many ways, to think that comeback is even a possibility for them?
I think maybe it depends on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes when they struggle to come back, it's a lot of so many ups and downs they might have had in their life, ups and downs, and as they get older and the age comes plays a part in it too. So they age,
Mm-hmm.
I call it looking at the billboard. They look at the billboard and they just see their life go by. So they figure they can't catch up in life.
Mm.
See their friends having, the new cars, the houses, the whatever they think in their mind. Been married, they want to get married. They want to have kids, they ain't got kids. So eventually, as time go by, they give up on yourself. Older
Mm-hmm.
as they get, they say, well, I ain't gonna get married. I can't have kids. So I'm not gonna get that car, that house. So eventually, as getting older, I think that's a part of thinking in their mind that they can't come back when they can. So that's kind of how I
Mm.
figure.
And I think that's a very valid point. I've heard men say this, and I'm certain that there's even been times in life in certain aspects, things that have gone on where I've had that mindset where, oh, it's too late for me. My time has passed. There's no need of me thinking about that it's possible for me to do this or accomplish that or to ever bounce back from this mistake or that scenario. When that is, like you said, is furthest from the truth. Again, going back to God's word, there are numerous examples of men who have been well in age, seasoned in years, that God has used in a mighty way to do great work. So, to any men that are tuning in, don't let your age be a determining factor as to you thinking that my chance for a comeback, my chance for a recovery, my chance for a come up can't happen because of how old I am now. That your time has suddenly passed you by, and that there's an age limit restriction, if you will, that says once you eclipse that, then there's no comeback for you, because that's an untruth. And anybody who's trying to tell you that, or trying to pour that into your heart, into your minds, you need to reject that, because that is just not factual, actual information, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So I'm glad you brought that up, Brother Carl, because that is definitely a common thing that men struggle with, is just the age. It's too late for me. What do you think, Brother Melvin, when you talk about that? Why men are struggling to believe that they can make a comeback?
Oh man, both of them had some good points, but you look at statistics: 73 to 74% of our households are one-parent family. That's a woman, and from generation to generation, especially in the hood, that is being said that you ain't gonna be it because your daddy wasn't it. You gonna be just like your daddy, nothing. And I've talked to about 20 some young men the other day from aging from 17 to 28. And it was just so amazing on what was stated. First of all, they told me I wasn't a man because I never been locked up. That's their philosophy, but it wasn't my philosophy. But it's just so important that I call it the power of a changed mind. I call it stinking thinking. We have to change the mindset. Podcasts like this and brothers like you breathing life into our men and young men. It's going to be so powerful to change the narrative, to change the aspect on not just the men, but the women also. I think it's so important. So we have to, I call it, be positive even in a negative situation. Life deal you lemons, make lemonade. Yeah. So.
Very, very good point. I love that you brought that up. So critical to this conversation that you mentioned that. And the statistics are real. The statistics are real about how we're processing in these moments in our struggle to believe that we can make a comeback. And like you said, just the trauma that comes, that impacts many men who've had to be raised in single parent homes where the mother was that lead parent in that situation. You just don't have any idea how much it impacts you, unless you've gone through that, and you see how it plays out in various aspects of your life. One thing that I wanted to come back to, that Brother Deric, that you mentioned, you talked about that isolation feel. You talked about sometimes that pride getting in the way. I wanted to kind of build on that a little bit more when we talk about how does pride and how does isolation hinder restoration, because one of the things that we've been talking about since the start of our conversation is how you got men who when it comes to that pride piece, I'm a man, I don't need no help, or when it comes to that isolation piece, they just rather just kind of curl up in their own little space, shut themselves off from the rest of the world, and it's almost like it's a security blanket, if you will, so to speak, to be encompassed in those four walls and just stand to myself, just saying I'm just gonna deal with this privately, because I'm afraid of the shame. I'm afraid of looking weak if I ask for help. I'm afraid of what if people know, what will they think of me? What is, if you want to, can you elaborate on that a little bit more for me, Brother Deric, as far as how that pride, how that isolation mentality can hinder a man being able to realize or experience his restoration, experience his recovery?
For me, it goes back to a saying that I always say, that life is not a do-it-yourself sport.
Mm,
Because if you had it figured out, if you could already get through the process on your own, then you'd already been done it. And so we have to connect with people who have the ability or have the experience to get through what we're going through at this time, or somebody who's a trained professional who can walk us through that process. And so when we go into that shell, when we go into that isolation mode, we put more on us than we can bear, because we don't understand that God put people in our lives in order to help us on our journey. But sometimes we turn a blind eye to those people. Sometimes we uh, separate ourselves from the people that actually have the clues to success or the techniques to get us through those processes. And when we do that, that's when the hindrance come in. When we make those decisions, we aid our hindrance and walk away from our healing. And that what continues the cycle of going through the process, the trauma, the mental health situations, and prolongs that time period instead of getting us to a healing that we need in a timely manner.
mm. Yes, yes, I totally agree with that. And I was just thinking as you were sharing all of this, about the fact that I know you do a lot of work with young people, and I'm sure you come across a lot of young men who might be dealing with some of these same things that we're talking about. How has that been for you? Just trying to make that connection, send that message to the younger men, whether they're teens or in their maybe early adulthood. Like, have you noticed it being a little bit different in how they're handling it, when they're younger, or versus some of us who we've been around for a little while? How does that work? How's that been working with you, or for you, in terms of trying to get that message across to the young brothers out here who are just challenged with how to have that recovery, how to have that comeback, how to overcome that isolation and that pride? What has that been looking like for you with regards to the young people?
Just like Pastor Lee hinted to earlier when he was talking to the younger generation, the younger boys, you have to understand that these young men are growing up without a father in their household. So they're not used to a man being their form. They're not used to a man telling them what it's like to grow up to be a man. They're not used to a fatherly figure in their life. So when you come into their life, you have to prove yourself to be one certified. Then you have to prove yourself to be trustworthy. Because we always hear the statement, they don't care how much you know till they know that you truly care. And so it's a process. It's a um, generational walls that's built up, because one, 9 times out of 10, their father was in prison, their father was left the home. And so they already have resentment towards men. And then their mothers are raising them. And so they have an inclination to lean more towards the feminine information that they've been given. And so when you come into their life, they got these walls built up. And if you don't take the time to actually build that trust with them, walk along with them. You can't just walk into their lives one day and then feel like they're going to listen to what you got to say, or um, take your advice, because it's been a proven time and time again in their lives that men come in and leave. And so why do I need to take the advice from another man when nobody has ever stuck around long enough to walk that process out with me?
Mm. That's again very critical point that you mentioned there. Building that trust, building that rapport, particularly with our young men, who, again, if they've grown up in a home where they didn't have a man, present, they didn't have their fathers present, it naturally makes them be on guard as to, why should I trust you? My own father, my own blood wasn't there for me all this time. What makes you different? You know, don't come in here trying to think you're going to impress me because you went to school, or you're making a little money, you're doing all that. I mean, do you
Yeah.
really care about me, or you just here just to speak to the poor, inner city kid, and get your check for speaking, and then going about your way? You don't care about me. You just doing this for your own standing, and things of that nature. So, as our Stephanie Seaton is mentioning, young men, they need solid mentors. So it's definitely for our brothers who are listening. If you don't have an active relationship with your children, that's a big deal, especially from a father to his son. He needs your presence. He needs you around. He needs you pouring into him, even if you and the son's mom are not. It didn't work out. That doesn't mean that you should be distant or separated, if you will, from being a part of that son's life, because whether you realize it or not, your presence, your listening ear, your concern, your care matters. Whether you think it doesn't or not, it truly do matters. And for ladies, if you have a situation like that, regardless of how things worked out between you and the father of your kids, um, don't don't put up a hindrance, don't put up a block from him having that relationship. Encourage the relationship between that father and son. Don't do anything that stands in between it, and don't speak negatively about the dad to that son, because whether you realize it or not, even in your frustration and your disappointment at how things played out, it can have a negative impact on your son, whether you realize it or not. So you have to be really, really careful about that. That was one of the things that I was thankful for. When I think about my own mom, I didn't grow up with my dad. I knew who my dad was, and I was able to see him from time to time. But one of the things that my mom never did, she never spoke badly about my dad. She never, blocked or impeded in any way from us being able to have an active relationship or anything of the like. Oh, she didn't block me. She didn't block him. She wanted me to have that bond. She wanted me to have that connection, even though they did not work out. And that is so, so critical. Um, you know, um, and as Stephanie's mentioned here, single moms, make sure that when you are considering a spouse, that you also consider your children. You need to
Mm,
only entertain men that can be solid fathers. That is true, ladies. Um, you if you're a single mom over a son, I understand that, just like men, women need companionship. They want, they want love, they want romance, they want all of that. But when you have a son, when you have children, you got to be mindful of not exposing that son to just any man. I don't care how fine you think he is, and how nice his car is, and how much money he's making. Know that he actually has a genuine interest and concern, not only in you and how he treats you, but then how he deals with your son, or your sons. And if there's a disconnect there, then that's a great indicator for you. That's the red flag for you that this might not be the right fit, and you don't want to put your desire for companionship ahead of what is ultimately best for that role model of that man around your son, because he could be abusive to your son, he could be mistreating to your son, he could be a negative influence, and you don't want to have that come into play. Um, Stephanie's also saying that make sure that the new father figure understands physical discipline is not an option, that they need to take the time to build a relationship with your child. There are other ways of discipline. Again, when it comes to that discipline conversation, whether you're boyfriend, girlfriend, whether he now becomes the stepfather in the situation, that's a conversation to have. As far as, how do you want to handle that? Allow, what uh what access are you going to allow? Let's just say this man is his stepdad. What access are you going to allow him to be the father that he is supposed to be? It does begin with building relationship. It does begin building trust, but you also want to make sure that even in a stepfather role, that man who is now that child's father, that he's allowed to be a father. And part of that being a father doesn't just mean you buy him stuff and you play with him and you hang out with him. There are going to be
mm,
moments of, where discipline may have to come into play. And what does that discipline look like? Because again, we don't want it to ever become abuse. We don't ever
mm,
want it to become mistreatment, but we also don't want to hinder or in any way water down what that respect is supposed to look like between a father and a son, even if he is the stepfather.
mm,
Don't miss that. And then most importantly of all, um, is what does that man's relationship look like with God?
mm,
Because that's going to tell you all you need to know right there. To be quite honest, that should be something, ladies, that as you're bringing in another man in, possibly into the life of that son, especially if you're talking about a son who might again be dealing with some trauma, maybe because his own father is not there. Maybe he was either never there, or maybe mom and dad have divorced. He may not even, whether he's vocalized it or not, trust and believe he's dealing with some hurt. He's dealing with some pain from that. So don't think that even in his silence about it, even if he's not fussing and complaining about it, don't think that he's not feeling it. And he's looking at the choices that you're making, who you're bringing around, because there's a protective nature that he's going to naturally have for you. But then there's also going to be, is this man going to be somebody who's trying to take my father's place? What kind of role is he going to play? How is he going to impact us? Is he going to care for us? Is he going to love me? Is he going to treat me, in a way that is appropriate and decent and in order? So all of those things come into play. So the absence of the father in the home is a very big deal. So men, definitely make sure, even if things don't work out with the mom, that you keep that constant connection with, not only with your son, but if you have opportunities, men, to um to be mentors, to be father figures in other areas, whether it's community organizations or other mentorship type programs. If your schedule allows you to do so and you have a willing heart, there are so many young men who need that pouring into, who need that coming alongside of, because many of them just don't have that resource, that person, that connection in their lives. So we definitely want to keep that in mind. One other thing that I wanted to capture before we transition here is when we talk about repentance. What does true repentance look like, and how does it lead to revival? When I think about repentance, prior to, here we go with the prerequisite again. One of the things that men struggle with when, we talking about that comeback moment, is part of their hindrance in being able to make that comeback is a struggle in forgiving themselves for what has happened, showing themselves some grace, showing themselves some mercy for what they did, not beating themselves over the head about a mistake that they made, like as if they're the only person in life that's ever done something wrong or ever made a mistake. So I want to throw that to you, Carl. What do you think about that? Why would you say that men sometimes even struggle to forgive themselves for past transgressions? And why is that a difficult thing for them to do? And then also, what does that accountability piece look like moving forward to make sure that they don't revisit these similar mistakes again? Because this is part of where that repentance comes in, to where not only am I wanting to be forgiven for what transgression I've made, but I want to make sure that I'm behaving and conducting and carrying myself in a way that is heading in a direction that is different than that sidetrack, that fall off that I fell into. Kind of talk to me a little bit about that when we talk about forgiveness and what that repentance or accountability looks like.
Just forgiving yourself. That's a hard one, because you go in, you know you're doing the right thing. You want to do the right thing. You following God's footsteps. Some just don't happen the way that you want it to happen. Um, it can be far as like you married and you get a divorce. You want to do everything right. You don't supposed to stay married the whole time, but some things happen in life. So you finally come along and you ask for forgiveness. Lord, you know me. I want to stay married. I want to do this, but you can't control, the other partner. So sometimes you got to ask for forgiveness. That kind of that weighs on you a lot too. I'm pretty sure for a lot of people out there that they have to get it, because I know some people don't want to get a divorce, but it's like you have to. So, but you just ask for forgiveness, and sometimes you just got to move on from that. Um, Renew yourself, renew your mind, I think.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, I agree that forgiveness piece is critical. Brother Melvin, what is your take on that? Like, what is it that why is it that men struggle sometimes to forgive themselves? They messed up. They may have paid whatever the price was for the mess up, but they're still beating themselves over the head about what they did, and as a result, it's hindering them from that comeback moment. It's keeping them from moving forward, or maybe I've forgiven myself, you know, but I haven't established a plan, if you will, of accountability, which ties into the repentance. What am I doing different? How do I position myself to do different so that I don't run into that same thing that caused me to fall off again? How do I do that? Kind of speak to that for me.
Well, it's a couple of different things, different scenarios, and it's about your circle. If I'm the smartest one in my circle, I need to change my circle. And if
Mm,
somebody and people in my circle is not, we're not uplifting each other and holding each other accountable, I need to change my circle. I think that's where it's so important because men, iron sharpen iron, meaning that we have to hold each other accountable. And a lot of times we don't do it, or like I said, or where we don't have an accountability. Where now if you know anything about the word, you may get convicted about what you're doing, but you may not know how to ask for forgiveness or ask God, say, hey, I wanna redo. I need to make this thing right, or whatever it may be, or transpire. I think, and it's different ways or different things on how to approach different things. Because if you may be in a circle where guys gonna say, hey, you weak. I've seen that happen. Oh, you're not a man. And it's just that, to me, those circles, you need to move from those circles to get somebody that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to build you up. It's all about, kingdom mindset, kingdom building. But we're in a world that, everybody's not saved. Where now, when you're looking at different things, I remember back in the day, I was at a barber shop in Delaware. And of course, they had a barbershop talk, and their mindsets was totally different than mine. So guess what? I had to switch barbershops because
Mm.
I mean, it wasn't about building nobody up. It was all about seeing who can hit a lick
Mm.
or smoke dope or whatever it may be. So I'm like, well, this ain't me. So they get a nice cut on me when I had hair. But but of course, I said, well, I need to go find me another one. And I think we need to know the difference and do that separation of where, hey, I need to do this. I can be all week. I know who I am and whom I am and who I believe in.
Well said. Well said. I think it is critical, as you mentioned, to be mindful of who the circle is around us, and I'm glad you pointed this out because it kind of ties into the next thing I wanted to cover, which is how can we as men support each other in our comeback journeys. When again, we all, the four of us, and many men who are not on this call, we've all had moments in time where we've had that fall off. We've gone through what we've gone through. We're on our journey of comeback. But remember, we've talked about all along, this is not a journey that should be taken on alone. That our comeback doesn't have to be a solo effort. So as men, and anybody can jump in on this one, just however you feel led to do so. What can we do as men to be more supportive of each other, particularly in our comeback journeys? What can we do to uplift and encourage and empower one another as men? Because again, we don't like to talk about this stuff. We don't like the shame, the pride, all of the things that we've discussed so far in the show. We tend to run from. We tend to avoid it. So what can we do as men to just let one another know, hey, bro, I got you. I'm here for you. You don't have to do this thing by yourself. What are things that you think we should do, or if there's some certain things that you guys are currently doing right now that are contributing to those kind of causes? I'm interested in hearing that. Anybody can jump in on that.
I think, Mr. Roberts, I think we need to just ask more questions. If you see another brother like as yourself or Mr. Durden or the other gentleman on the podcast, um, ask questions separately. I pull you to the side, say, and then once we talk, follow up. Make sure we get that follow up. Check on me, see how I was doing from the first conversation that we had. Uh, just follow up with me and see how I'm doing. See am I right? Because you might be stronger than me. So you already know I'm weak. So make sure I'm getting stronger. That's the only way I can probably get strong, because I might not have had nobody in my life. It's a lot of men that don't have nobody in their life. You know, they go through life. They might be 50, 60 years old, but still, I had people talk to me and say, man, you know, you the only one person talk to me. I'm like, huh? I wouldn't even know that just by, you know, just by him saying, how am I the only person talking? You ain't got nobody talking to you and you 55 years old. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you're the only person that really talks to me and have a conversation with me. So you never know what somebody else is going through. So follow with that person. Um, because like you say, once they back in them four walls at home, you don't want them to do something to themselves. You know, you want them to get stronger. You only get weaker when that devil is still chopping at you. Because you're in that
Hmm.
four walls and you're just looking up to the wall, the devil is going to work. So them
Yeah.
thoughts, you can keep them, the good thoughts, the positive thoughts, and then you can leave out the negative, you know, going the other way, I think. So just to follow up, you know, with somebody asking questions. Because if they ask a question, they ask a question for a reason.
Yeah. And the thing about the asking of the questions, a lot of people, there may be some men right now that are hearing you say that and they're thinking to themselves, what questions do I ask? I don't want to feel like I'm like all up in this man's business or whatever. I know I wouldn't want somebody to be all up in my business. But the first thing that I'm thinking of right offhand, when you talk about asking questions, it could start off with just something as simple as, hey, bruh, how you doing? You
Mm-hmm.
good? you know and pay attention to the body language, pay attention to what this brother is saying, and allow God to use you to have the discernment to know that, yeah, Carl, I might have asked Carl, hey bro, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And if he the way he said it, or what you said, don't just I'm all right.
Yeah,
I might need to ask you, what that mean? I know you. I'm good. I know you're a good brother, but are you good? You
yeah,
good, bro? Are you,
yeah,
family good, money good? What, you straight?
yeah.
I'm checking in on you.
Right.
One of my good friends, we check in on each other from time to time. He'll call me and be like, hey man, I'm just doing a heat check. He just
Mm,
checking in on me. And the funny thing is there have been times when he's checked in and everything has been just fine. And then there's been other times, because I don't never necessarily know the day or time that he's going to call. We don't have a
right.
routine, but it's almost like there's again, going back to that discernment, when you are forming bonds with other men, and you're developing relationships. It's almost like a sixth sense. Like, you know what, I ain't heard from Carl in a minute, I ain't heard from Melvin, and let me see what this brother's up to. Something just kind of puts it on your spirit, and usually when that happens,
Mm,
when I felt that way about somebody that I was checking on, or they felt that way and they were checking on me, something was going on. I
mm,
needed to talk to somebody, and they called me at the right time, or I called them at the right time, and I was able to have that conversation, to just, if nothing more, just to let it out. I just needed somebody to say it to.
mm.
It wasn't about you fixing my problem. It wasn't anything. I just needed to talk to somebody, because you there's so many men who don't have anybody to talk to. We just recently had the follow-up Men Hurt 2 gathering. We met up at the restaurant, and it was five of us together, and we were just kind of hanging out, having a meal and everything. But in that conversation, all of the brothers that were sitting around that table said, they couldn't remember the last time that they just hung out with other men, just
Mm,
to not only just to break bread, but to just talk about some of the things that we talked about. One of
right.
the brothers even one of the brothers that was there even shed a few tears, because he
Mm,
was just holding in something, and he didn't have nobody to talk to it about. But
right.
that day, over lunch, he felt comfortable in that space, because we made that space be what it was, and he was able to just get it off his chest. And we gave him some encouragement. We gave him some words of wisdom, as best as we could, that he could chew on and meditate on, to take back to his situation. And definitely, we of course included God in that, but that was so necessary. And you just don't know. I had no idea that this brother was going to pour out like he did. He wasn't at the original conference. He was a guest,
Right.
but
Right.
it was the atmosphere. He felt he was in a community of safety amongst men who weren't looking to judge him and ridicule him and talk about him. We was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah. And the crazy thing was the subject matter that he talked about, there were others of us at the table who were dealing with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was just the one who ignited the conversation. And it wasn't coaxed out of him or anything like that. We just kind of got on a topic and then
Yeah.
he just let loose like running water. But he needed to get it out. And we
Right.
need that. We need those check-ins. We need those heat checks. We need those things like that.
Yeah.
Brother Melvin, you got anything else to add to that? What can we do to be of support with one another? I know we talked about that right circle, but what other things can we do that we haven't covered that might be some good suggestions, not only for us, but for those other brothers that's listening, that these are some good ideas to help your fellow brother, whether he's somebody you've known for decades or whether this is a brother you barely maybe just met. How can I support him? How can I let him know that I'm here for him?
Man, you get we all you guys are in there. I mean, bullseye. Now, what I do on a daily basis is just not men. I have about 45 people or so that I
Mhm.
text every day. And I say, hey, man, hey, good morning. It's Marvelous Monday. It's Terrific Tuesday. Hey, how's everything going? Now, if they say that one word, good, and I say, no, is it really good? Because and with our society today, we're not talkative like we need to. So
Mm-hmm.
of course you got to kind of pull it out of us. I use them I statements as I call them. You need to get them to talk more. But I do it through text a lot because I'm always going. Now there are some I do personally call. Right, it's some people that lost some loved ones or some good close friends. I mean, it's an everyday thing, man. I mean, I one lady, she can tell you, I've been texting her for about 8 years. She lost her husband, and her husband was a good friend of mine. But I do it every day.
Hmm.
Hey, I'm still here, still praying for you. Just letting you know, hey, let me know if you need something. And I think it's so important and that's a village there. We as a village, we need to take back some things. We've gotten so used to being in our little cycle or our little clone where or we don't want to feel vulnerable to somebody, but we have to make people feel comfortable, and that's where you build that relationship up, build that trust up where some people can where men can confine in you. They're just not going to do it overnight. It takes some build up.
Yeah, yeah. Everything again, man. Everything you said is so much on point, and I like the fact that you have a daily routine that you do where you have some specific people that you check in with. I know myself. It's not necessarily restricted to just men, but I like to share. When I do my devotionals each morning, I do a recap of what my devotionals are, and I post that online because again, you just never know on any given point in time when somebody needed to hear the very thing that you're sharing. That they needed that checking in on you. They needed that word of encouragement. They needed that uplifting. I got some people who I know are regulars that I can pretty much count on that they're gonna check. But then every now and then there's a name that I don't see click the like button or put something in the comment, but then they might private message me or something like that and say, thank you for sharing that. I needed that today. You just don't know. So kind of tying it in what you said, Brother Melvin, what ultimately was powerful about what you said is it could be summed up in one word, which is consistency.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
it's the consistency of it. We talked about when we did our Men Heard 2 conference, the reason why we had to follow up 3 months later was because we didn't want to just have this wonderful event that we had and then say, see you all next year,
Mm-hmm.
and we got a 12-month gap where we don't talk to each other. We ain't seeing it. Hey, that brother that I met at that event, is he good? I wonder is all everything is what's going on or whatever. We want to make sure that those kind of things are are critical. That those are a natural part of what we do. It's kind of like we don't want to. In other words, we as men, when we talk about this subject matter of supporting one another, we don't want to wait until the challenge happens
Mm-hmm.
and then we react. We want to have an ongoing thing of, again, being supportive, being there for one another. So when that storm comes, because we obviously we can't predict the timing, we can't predict the specific day of the week when it's going to occur. The moment we can't even predict the level of intensity that it's going to hit us at. But if you already know that the circle is here, that the circle is in place, and as a result of that circle being here, as a result of it all being in place, that when you know that that's there, then you're less likely to freak out when the storm comes. You're less likely to go into panic mode because I got somebody, I got a circle of men who I could pick up the phone and I could call Melvin and say, bro, you got a few minutes, man. I just need to, or can we meet up later? Or brother Carl, man, I didn't mean to interrupt your day, man, but I just need to chop it up on something, just I got to get this out. Can we, when you know you got some brothers in hand that's around you, that's in your circle, that can do that for you, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. Um, I've had my share of storms in life that, had I not had, and I'm not gonna sit here and profess that I've always had I'm still trying to build that circle. Still trying. It's very, very, very small. Um, I wouldn't even say it's a complete circle. But I know I'm not alone in that regard. It's like I know a lot of people and a lot of people know me, but when it comes down, when you get down to those dark moments, those trying moments, those difficult times, who can I really, when I'm really going through, who can I reach out to and know that they're not going to only be there for me, but that they're going to receive me in a loving, brotherly way, that I can be vulnerable around them. I can be transparent around them and know that when I do so, again, you ain't gonna laugh at me. You ain't gonna talk about me. You ain't gonna make me feel small. You're not gonna make me feel like I'm a punk or I'm weak minded or anything like that. You're gonna embrace me as men should do one another, and you're gonna support me. You're gonna tell me if I'm out of pocket on something.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm out of order, you're gonna tell me that, but you're gonna do it in love. You're not gonna do it in disrespect. You're gonna do it because you care about me and you want to see me thrive. You want to see me, again, rise and elevate. You want to
Right.
see me, you want to see me be the best version of myself that I can be. So we need men like that. And so when we're talking about that support, brothers that are listening, you got to have that. And it doesn't have to be this massive circle. I'm saying just like if you got a few good men, I don't mean to be cliche about that, but if you got a few good godly men in your circle that are ride or dies with you, that
Mm-hmm.
you know that they got your back, that that in itself is valuable. That in itself is significant. That in itself is substantial. So um that's a very, very big deal. So um this is good stuff, man. I'm thoroughly glad we're having this conversation. I think Brother Derek has some technical difficulties. He's not been able to get back on. So hopefully he'll be able to jump back in, because I was hoping we'd get a chance to delve in a little bit more about his story, because he does have a powerful story as well. But we all do. We all do. So I'm thankful for my brother Derek being with us this evening. Hopefully he can jump back on with us. Um, but did you guys? While we're doing that, and again, brother Carl, brother Melvin, either one of you can chime in. Do you have a story that you want to share? Any something particular that comes to mind, that you can think of where you were facing a challenging situation that you didn't know how you were going to come back from that thing, but but God stepping in, showing you that grace, showing you that mercy, you were able to see some, ultimately come up out of that situation and see some light at the end of the tunnel. I know I've been through my share of stuff. I don't know if either of you brothers wanted to share something with us, share something with our audience before we end our broadcast this evening. If you got something you'd like to share
Um,
that comes to mind.
I can just kind of jumping a little bit off subject, but just overcoming something. Um, you making a comeback. I'm making a comeback. You can make comeback on your health. Your health is a good thing to make a comeback on. You can be eating a certain way. You can eat the fried food, the pork chops, the things that's fried food, fried chicken, and I know it's all good. It tastes good and everything else, but everything that tastes good might not be good for you. So you kind of switch it up to get grilled fish, baked fish, green vegetables, stuff like that. As you get older and you black, your health, you got to take care of yourself. That's just being real with you. And then as you get older, your metabolism slows down. So some overcome me. I got diagnosed with high blood pressure. So trigger meter, I don't want to be taking these pills. So let me get introduced to my best friend. My best friend was that treadmill. That treadmill turned my life around, and it made me have a comeback to get off the blood pressure medicine and starting getting my blood pressure right on time. And as you steady checking your blood pressure and seeing if you're good day in and day out, and you start eating good, and then your health start getting better and better and better. But this thing here, you got to do it slowly but surely. You got to keep doing it every day. I know it's a struggle, from you eating, certain foods all the time to start eating right. So you can eat right and you can overcome and you can make a comeback with your health, guys. That's a big way. And be more energized, you'll be more happier with yourself, you'll look better, and you'll feel better. So that's how you can overcome, guys, and make a comeback. Is on your health, guys, and that's good for you. And then anybody in your family, they'll start asking you questions. And what are you doing? So and so, what are you doing? You tell them what you're doing, and then you can trickle that down to them and make them feel better. And they get better on their health kit. So we all got to get better on the health kit, guys. That's what I want to share.
Well, that's definitely a great testimony right there, because there's a lot of brothers who have had some near death experiences, if you will, or been faced with the possibility of having to be on a bunch of different medications and things like that. And sometimes when you find yourself in that vulnerable moment where you didn't experience what it feels like for that chest to tighten up, or something of that nature that had you scared for a moment from that medical situation, that to overcome that, you had to change your eating habits. You had to change your exercise regimen and things of that nature. But even so, it may not have been something that you could do in your own strength. You needed God to help you to purge your flesh of the things that you used to like to do and partake in. It wasn't necessarily healthy for you, wasn't necessarily good for you. So, and to have that recovery, to have that bounce back. So definitely a good point. Was Brother Melvin, you wanted to share something?
But and it's so many different things I could go over. But as
Mm-hmm.
the brother talked about health, I was diagnosed with stage 4 chest cancer,
Mm.
and when I give all glory and honor to God, where I started researching, and I was able to, of course, having some contacts, go over to MD Anderson in Houston, and go through all the chemo and radiation and find out that apricots kills cancer cells. Uh, Taking some bitter soursop, taking moringa, where now you, as soon as I say it, people don't believe that I even ever went through what I went through. Because they put you on the steroids, try to blow you up and have an appetite, but I mean, I thank God, man. I ain't gonna say I'm the healthiest where I need to be, but my body is restoring. Matter of fact, I run up 9 flights of stairs about 5 days a week. Trying to, I ain't gonna say I'm in shape where I want to be, but I definitely do a lot of things that I wasn't able to do, say about 8 months ago.
Hmm.
But
You know,
just that recovery, that comeback.
yes, yes. You know what I love about your story is you made the comment, and we've heard people say this, but there's some truth to it. When you said, I know I don't look like what I've been through, and
Mm,
that is another testament of
yes,
what
sir.
separates worldly comebacks from godly comebacks. See, when God puts his hand on it, um, you know, and he delivers you from that situation, you'll have a circumstance, you'll have a situation, you'll have an outcome that people will be surprised when they're probably people who didn't know you about your journey, and you share that with other people, and they go, "Oh my God, I never knew you had gone through that help situation. I never knew you had gone through that divorce. I never knew you had gone through this particular financial debacle. I would have never been able to tell had you not told me." That's how God does, because the goal isn't to you for you to look like you are that again, that you're out of the race, that you are have been so drained, so disintegrated, so to speak. No, he has a way of not only making you have that recovery, that comeback that we've been speaking about this whole evening, but he'll make you look brighter than what you looked like before the storm even came. Yeah,
Right.
we talked about earlier about Job.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example of that. He already had it going on more than anybody could ever imagine a man having it going on. Then he goes to a whole opposite extreme, looking as bleak as one could possibly look when you think about it from a human standpoint. But then when his comeback happens, you thought he had it going on before all of that went down. His going on just went up multiple levels. That's how God does it. That's how he touches in those situations. So, again, brother Melvin, I appreciate your transparency and sharing that story with us. Because as I'm thinking about that, just the time that I've known you and had a chance to visibly see you across the screen, I would have never thought that you know had gone through that, because we have a tendency, as men, definitely as men, we're visual. I'm looking at you. You look like you're a man of good health. Doing your thing. Handling your business. Didn't know this brother. And you said this is less than a year ago that
Yes,
you
sir. Less
had
than a
been,
year. Yes, sir.
going through that battle. So I'm like, that's not how that's supposed to look. you
Mm.
know, But look at you.
Yes,
Look
sir.
at you. But or maybe better saying it. Better say it. Look at God.
Look at God. That's right.
Look
Look
at
at God.
God. You
Mhm.
know, here's a living, walking example of what God's hands does when He touches you, when He
Oh,
touches
yes,
your
sir.
life. When He makes a move in your situation that man couldn't have moved that for you. Man couldn't have
Uh-huh.
opened that door for you. He had to open that door for you. Man couldn't have made that opportunity available to you. Only He could have made that available to you. So all of those things, man, are huge, huge, huge when we talk about the comeback. So when we think about our takeaways, because this has been a very awesome, powerful conversation this evening. Um, of course, comeback starts with confession. You have to own the fact that, you know what, I'm hurting. I've been through something. I'm going through something. There has to be an acknowledgement of what's happening. But
Mm-hmm.
then from there, we begin that journey of the comeback. So we talk about, and there's scripture that supports that. Psalms 51, surrounding yourself with truth tellers.
Uh-huh.
Proverbs 27:6, rebuilding with purpose. I don't want to just come back just because if I just come back just for the sake of saying that I come back, and there's no purpose tied to it, I don't understand why I had to go through what I went through, then I'm subject to repeat the same thing that caused me to fall off. I'm subject to fall back into that old way. So I want to rebuild with purpose, and I want to rebuild with an understanding that I don't have to be perfect. This is not about me being perfect, because again, I'm not perfect. There's only one perfect one that we know of, and that's God Himself. So the goal is not for me to be perfect. The goal is not for me to justify my mistakes or anything like that, or my shortcomings to anybody to gather their approval or anything of the like. But I do want to rebuild with purpose. And then we talk about Philippians, that's in Philippians 1. We got Philippians 1:6, and we talk about, staying rooted in our identity and not our performance. Who am I? We've talked about that quite a bit throughout the show. What does my identity look like? I don't care what I'm going through. I don't care what I'm struggling with. What does my identity look like? Is my identity based upon what the world says it is, or is my identity in Christ? Which one is it? And that's a key thing for us to keep in mind as men. We want to keep that in mind, in particular, since we're talking about, men in this conversation. Brothers, know your identity. Know that your identity is in Christ. That's who you want it to be in, not what the world is trying to picture you to be, not what is popular on social media for you to be, but what does Christ say that he created me for? What is my purpose? What path am I supposed to be walking in? What works am I supposed to be that I'm supposed to be doing that is going to glorify him, that is going to allow him to use me as a vessel, where I can use these storms that I've been through over the course of my life, where I can use these as testimonies. I can use these as opportunities to connect, to relate to other people, to be a blessing to other people. So, this is ultimately what it's all about. And so as we kind of wind down for our evening tonight, because again, powerful conversation with you brothers, the prayer that we want to have, not only for ourselves, but to all of our listeners, is, we want to pray for that restoration. We want to pray to have the courage that's necessary to not only endure the battle, but to be able to embrace the recovery process. We want every man who is listening to have that needed clarity, so that you no longer feel stuck, that you no longer feel ashamed, that you no longer feel forgotten. Let's put an end to that this evening. If that's where you are, that's the prayer that you need to ask God. Lord, restore me. Lord, give me that courage. Let me know that it's not too late for me. I can bounce back. Make it clear to me, Lord, what I need to do next to get out of this stuck feeling, this shame feeling, this forgotten feeling. Tell me that it's okay to show myself some grace, that I can be forgiven, that it's not too late for me. It doesn't matter what my age is, my demographics, none of that. That I still matter to you, that I'm still important to you, that you have not left me, you have not forsaken me. You still love me. You still want nothing but the best for me. Remind me of that if I've forgotten it, Lord, so that I can begin to take those steps forward, even if they're baby steps. I can begin to take those steps forward to my comeback, to my recovery, to doing the things that you would have for me to do. There was purpose in the storm. There was purpose. Give me those godly lenses to put on so that I can understand the why to what I have to go through, so that the next time I'm going through something, that I don't allow the inconvenience or the discomfort to be my focus, that I just trust in you, that this is by design, this is not by accident, and that all I need to do is just continue to lean on you and trust in you along the way, to seek my comeback, to seek my recovery, to be able to praise you and give you all the credit for it happening. So with that said, my brothers, Brother Carl, Brother Melvin, I thank you, brothers, so much for tuning in with us this evening, joining on the podcast with us. To our brother Deric, sorry he couldn't get back online to finish out our evening, but I'm appreciative of him being aboard with us. It's been great having him a part of the crew. Always good to connect with other brothers. And again, to be transparent and vulnerable in our safe space that we provided here. Thank you to our listeners, both men and women, for your participation, for your comments, because whether you realize it or not, when you speak on, when you comment on, when you identify with what we're doing, it matters to us. It lets us know that this is not just a random thing that we're doing. It reminds us of the why, that this is necessary. And so we appreciate your support. We appreciate your encouragement. And we ask you to share this with other people. Let them know about the show. Let them know every fourth Sunday of the month we do this, 7 p.m. Facebook Live. Link in, tune in, men or women, young or old. Jump on. We want you to be a part of this experience because these kind of conversations need to happen. They are necessary. They are important. They are valuable. Any other closing thoughts that you brothers have before we sign off? Brother Melvin, you got any last bit of encouragement, last words of encouragement you want to give to the brothers?
Man, I'm just appreciative to be on the podcast with such you great brothers, man. Like I said, we just say iron sharpens iron. We're just trying to change the narrative, change the mindset, get rid of that stinking thinking. Man, bless you all.
All right, all right. And Brother Carl, any last words?
Man, each day you rise, you get another chance to elevate. Remember to rise and elevate. Remember, start off good, you end up good. Let's do it, guys. Let's go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, last but not least, a special thanks to our sister Stephanie for even making this platform possible, for having the mind frame to be obedient to God, to set this up so that we can even have a special space like this for the brothers to come together and speak on these topics. Very much needed, very much necessary for all of us, man. So again, thanks to her for her role in making this all possible. And of course, always, always thank you to God for everything that he's doing for us and his covering and his protection and his love for us. So until next time, to our listeners, to my brothers, we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you so much for being a part of this experience. And we look forward to seeing you the next fourth Sunday in November to do it all over again. So join us at the My Brothers Keepers podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a great rest of your evening.
Blessings.
Thank you for watching My Brother's Keeper podcast, a safe space for men here on the Stephanie M. Seton Sunday Show channel. Healing, empowerment, transformation.